Hey, hey, hey. Happy Wednesday. Come on in. Pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, 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 gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang channel, brought to you by, incredibly enough, thegaminggang.com, which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. Welcome aboard. Tonight is Wednesday, January 11th, 2023. It is live stream 873. If you're not overly familiar with the channel, let me point out, super casual around here. In fact, this isn't like brain surgery, or as I like to say, rocket surgery by any stretch of the imagination. We're just hanging out, talking about the latest in tabletop gaming news and taking a look at a tabletop game, which, of course, we are going to be doing tonight, and it happens to be a War Game Wednesday. And we will be diving on in to take a look at the Charge of the Three Kings from NAC Wargames. That's right, they now have a North American store. So if you are in the US or Canada, it's much easier to get your hands on any of the NAC Wargame titles. So that is what's on the agenda tonight. This box is pretty heavy, I must say. Anyway, of course, should also mention that this is a little bit different than some streams out there. So we do tackle the tabletop gaming news, and we do that first. So if you're tuning in because you want to see the unboxing and first look at the Charge of the Three Kings, keep in mind it's probably going to be about 40 minutes or so before we jump on into that. But if you are not watching this live, if you're watching this 30 minutes or more after the stream has ended, then there will be timestamps. They are located in the show notes, and depending on what device you may happen to be watching this on, could be right there in the timeline, right in front of you on the device you're taking a peek at. So all depends on what you're using. But if you want, if you're impatient, if you don't want to check out the cool tabletop gaming news today, you can jump ahead right into the unboxing. So keep that in mind. Also, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more that you won't find here on the Gaming Gang channel. Should also point out this is a live stream, so that means chat's available. It's not on screen. It's one of the ways I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. But if you are a subscriber to the channel and you have been for 48 hours or more, you can take part in chat. So if you want to say howdy, maybe you've got a question, a comment, by all means, chime in. I will do my best to respond. So the first thing is I kind of played around with things today, and I'll talk about that in a little more depth. But the weird thing is I had this new little overlay that shows my name, and it seemed like it disappeared now. Hang on, let's see something here. No, it's not that. What in the world happened to it? I thought I had it all set up. Watch, it'll pop up like later on. It'll be like, what the hell? Now it's showing up? What is the deal here? But I also messed around with some of the video settings because, in my opinion, when we do that overhead shot, it's still not as clear, as crisp as I would like it to be. I think one of the reasons is because I tend to share the 8-bit video as opposed to the 10-bit video. And it's because I don't actually have a video card that'll encode the 10-bit. So, we'll see. We'll see. It might be a little sharper. Might be a little sharper tonight. We'll find out. I really notice it when we're looking at books, where it's like, that text just isn't sharp enough, at least, you know, for me, in my opinion. All right, so as I mentioned, chat is available. And first out the gate tonight was Kathy Evans in chat. We've got the Motor City Man, Sebastian Manzer is with us. For some reason, I think that might be a first-time visit. I apologize if you've hung out before and for some reason your name's not ringing a bell. Sorry. Watch it be like, Jeff, I'm here like every show. What the hell's wrong with you, dude? Coco B is with us. Simeon has popped on in. Stray Kismet Flaming here on. Our pal Chen from Taiwan is in the house. Dan Wheeler as well. Joseph Kwam. I actually got Joseph out this time. I don't know why the last two shows I go to say Joseph and it's like, I swear this is only diet soda. There is nothing else in here. Nothing else, I swear. Nothing up my sleeves. Kevin R. Smith is with us too. And I think, I was going to say, I think I've said hello to everybody, but 245 Trioxin is with us, as well as Russell Higgins. So now I believe I have said hello to everyone out there. So howdy, howdy, howdy. It is a War Game Wednesday. But before we get on into the Charge of the Three Kings, let's talk about the tabletop gaming news. Because arriving in February is Vivarium. Oh, see, now that popped up. See, now that wasn't supposed to pop up. I tell you, I mess around with stuff and it's just like OBS Studios it's plotting against me. It must be it. Arriving in February is Vivarium from Studio H and Hachette Board Games. Here's the scoop. 1898, Siberia. The seismologist Edgar Wundhoff discovers a continent free of any human presence, sheltering a teeming life in forms never encountered before. Unknown plants, colossal creatures. Faced with this shocking discovery, the world's scientific elite gathered in Paris for the Universal Exposition, create the Vivarium Syndicate, and decide to send explorers into this new continent. An efficient and tense card collection game with great artistic direction. Each turn, players use dominoes to create coordinates that allow them to build their card collection. After 7 rounds, the player that has successfully completed their objectives and collected the greatest creatures wins the game. Cards are placed on the board. Each turn, players use pairs of dominoes to create coordinates and grab the corresponding card on the board. Among this grid of cards, fantastic creatures divided according to their species and biotopes, scientific objectives, but also various equipment cards to facilitate the taking of future cards. After 7 rounds, the player that has successfully completed their objectives and collected the greatest creatures, you know it, they are named the winner. Vivarium is for 2 to 4 players, ages 10 and up, plays in around 30 minutes. It's going to arrive in February, but I do not have any MSRP info just yet. In fact, Studio H doesn't even have a working website anymore. Well, okay, I take that back. Their landing page says that they're undergoing a renovation. There are some interior pages to the website that are still active. And going to Hachette Board Games, who is going to be releasing this here in North America, they don't have a price on it yet. I'm taking a guess, maybe $39.99. So strangely enough, there's another board game which kickstarted in, I think, 2016, came out in 2017, and it's the same title, and it's sort of the same premise, but it looks completely different. There are like hex maps and tokens to mark your explorers and things like that. So I'm almost curious if this is like a completely revamped edition of that game. But I gotta say, this sounds cool. It does. It sounds pretty cool. So Dan Wheeler says they're just here for the commercial breaks. Well, you got a ways before we get to our brief intermission, but we will have one. We will have one. So it's a War Game Wednesday. Let's talk about some wargaming news, because arriving in Q1 from Verssen Games is Stuka Leader. Here's the latest. Stuka Leader is based on Corsair Leader and Zero Leader, expanding gameplay from the previous games. You are in command of a German aerial squadron in Europe in World War II, with aircraft including the Messerschmitt Me-109 and Me-262, the Heinkel He-111, the Focke-Wulf FW-190, and the eponymous Junkers Ju-87 Stuka. Yes, and it is Junkers. And somebody one time argued with me. It's like, no, it's Junkers. And I'm like, no, it's not. It is Junkers. You'll need to select the right mix of pilots and aircraft under your command in order to carry out the different types of missions. Each aircraft has its advantages and disadvantages. The game also expands additional aspects of German operations, such as fuel barrels, wounds, and bailouts. There's also a new campaign sheet and tactical display, which will present a different feel to the well-established Leader gameplay. In Stuka Leader, you'll command a huge selection of German, and in the Mediterranean expansions, Italian aircraft as you work through a vast selection of campaigns, each with its unique blend of targets and goals. Campaigns span the entire war in Europe from 1939 until 1945. With the available expansions, you're able to fly even more aircraft, including the tank-busting Junkers 87G against the Soviets in the Eastern Front and the British and Americans in the Mediterranean. There's also even a Spanish Civil War expansion for those who want to fly the Heinkel 51 against I-15 and I-16s, besides the Aces expansion, which will include such names as Galland, Boulders, Rudel, and plenty more. There's even a what-if expansion that gives you aircraft like the HO-299 and the E-555 America bomber. Stuka Leader is for one player, ages 14 and up, plays in around 45 minutes to 2 hours. It's going to depend on the mission and how it's going. And it's going to carry an MSRP of $109.99 when it arrives early this year. So keep in mind, the $109.99 is for the core game. But if you take a peek, years ago, I have reviewed some of the Leader games from Verssen Games. And I'm telling you, Verssen Games makes hella good solitaire war games that keep you coming back for more. There is so much replayability to the various different Leader games. Now, I've reviewed modern era Leader games. I have not reviewed any of the latest that have come out, which are World War II. but really, really well done. And I know you might be sitting there thinking, wow, $110, that's pricey, man. You're getting close into the Gloomhaven price range. I'm telling you, if this is like the other leader games, it is certainly going to be worth that small investment, most certainly. All right, let's talk about some role-playing game news, because as Flaming Huron mentioned, actually, I'm sorry, Madman's got a quick question before we jump into the next news piece. The Happy Wargamer has joined us asking, is Wargame Wednesday back? For the foreseeable future, it is. Please keep in mind, if I don't have a war game for us to look at, or maybe for me to share a review of, then it's really not going to be a War Game Wednesday. We should also have a War Game Wednesday next week, too. So keep that in mind. But yes, if I can do a War Game Wednesday, I will do War Game Wednesdays. So the Madman's curious if Stuka Leader is going to arrive before their Warfighter Fantasy. I don't know. So this is what I saw. Now, I get a lot of my information from distributor websites. So I don't necessarily get information from the, publishers, because funny enough, there are a lot of times that I share news about a game that's not even on the publisher's website yet, but the distributors already have the information all about them. So, in fact, case in point, I don't think this is on the Verssen Games website, although it is slated for Q1. And in that same release range, I did see the Warfighter Fantasy. The only reason I haven't shared any news about Warfighter Fantasy is because there isn't really that much info out there. I know they had a Kickstarter. I guess I could pull info from the Kickstarter itself, but even if memory serves me correctly, I went to go take a peek on Board Game Geek because I was going to share it, because I was sort of like, that sounds very interesting, because I like Verssen Games. I don't get an opportunity to review a lot of their releases, but I really do like them quite a lot. And I was like, every time I'm stumbling across something, I'll share news about their Kickstarters and things like that. And like I said, I know Warfighter Fantasy kickstarted, but I can't find really images for it. And it was really weird. Even the distributor website one of them that I use that had mentioned it, didn't even have box images for it. So I was like, And I don't think that's on the DVG website either. So yes, the Madman says they backed Warfighter Fantasy, but it's been nearly 2.5 years since it funded. Yeah, I'm sorry. That is unfortunate for sure. I know this has not taken that long to arrive. I was going to say, I could have swore I seem to recall when they rolled that out, because they were doing, I think they were also doing another Warfighter Modern or something, kind of at the same time, or World War II, one of the two. Or maybe it was Vietnam. I don't know, because the Warfighter series has expanded tremendously. So hopefully you will be seeing that soon enough. I can't tell you anything. I don't know if there's been updates on the Kickstarter page or not. But as far as I know, I would trust Verssen Games. They're not going to pull a Palladium and, somehow misappropriate your money. So, Kevin says it was a thing. War Game Wednesday is a thing. Dan's asking. And Kevin points out that I have been concentrating more on role-playing games the last few months. But I do more war games and board games. I wouldn't say that. It's just, I just happened to get a bunch of war games sent to me very recently. So as I mentioned, I had gotten 2 pretty big boxes from GMT Games. So I've got some more GMT games to share with you. We've already taken a look at Charioteer and Twilight Struggle Red Sea. And I shared those first because those are the 2 I was most really interested in taking a peek at. And then I've got some other stuff too that's a little more traditional war games. We've got Skies Over Britain, if I remember correctly. Kevin says thanks for the correction. Hey, not really a correction. I'm just, because I don't want people to think, oh, wow, now Jeff's going to have war games every week. And then suddenly there's going to be a Wednesday and it's like, hey, I'm sharing the new Pathfinder book. People are like, what? Where's the war game, man? All right. So moving right along, as I started to say, Bundle of Holding has a new offer, which Flaming Heron mentioned yesterday. So I am sharing that tonight. It features non-open game license fantasy role-playing games. And I've got the deets on the deal. Adventura. The tabletop fantasy role-playing hobby is bigger than one game or one license, as shown by this new non-open game license fantasy bundle. None of these excellent fantasy RPGs in this offer are based on the open game license, but they all empower your own adventures of heroes and quests, monsters and magic, intrigue and danger, and for an unbeatable bargain price. For just $9.95, you'll get all 5 complete titles in the starter collection, which have a retail value of $41, as DRM-free PDFs, including the Mithras core rules, the Dark Eye rulebook, Advanced Fighting Fantasy, Heroes Against Darkness, and the Old Skull Manifesto, which I do believe the Old Skull Manifesto is available absolutely free right now on Drive-Thru RPG. And I think there's also another of the Old Skull kind of like introductions to fantasy role-playing games, which is a pay what you want. Regardless, if you pay more than the threshold price of $29.51, there's where that one came from, you'll level up and also get our entire bonus collection with 5 more complete games worth an additional $95.50, including Kevin Crawford's Worlds Without Number Deluxe Edition, Green Ronin's Sword Chronicle, which, if I remember right, I think that's Robert J. Schwalb who wrote that. And there's also Green Ronin's Fantasy Age core book, the recent Traders edition of Warlock, and Against the Dark Master, which is a modern version of Middle East. What the? I need a sip here. I almost said Middle Eastern role playing. Yes, Jeff. All right, everybody. So be sure to get this Bundle of Holding because it's got that game that's like a modern version of Middle Eastern role playing. Middle Earth role playing is what Against the Dark Master is. Although I don't know for sure. I do not know. Maybe somebody can let me know in chat or possibly in the comment section after the stream. So I don't promote Zweihander because, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions, it is essentially just a ripped off Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition with the setting filed off. And like no credit is given to Games Workshop or anything like that. So, and yes, I know it now has a publisher who sends me like press releases that I completely ignore. Because to me, like I said, I got no time for people ripping companies off, even if it's companies that people don't care for, right? There are a lot of people who they have issues with Games Workshop. But that doesn't mean I want to see, you know, their stuff ripped off. Anyway, what I was saying is I had the impression Against the Dark Master was kind of the same thing. Not from the same author or anything like that, but it was sort of the, yeah, we're gonna do the Middle Earth role play, you know, system, and we'll just file off the Tolkien setting. I don't know. Somebody out there certainly let me know. Clear that up for me, because I certainly don't want to be knocking it if I shouldn't be, but I just kind of got that impression. I don't know. So Kevin R. Smith says, it looks like Sword Chronicles is Green Ronin's old Game of Thrones game with the serial numbers filed off after they lost that license. I don't know. Did Robert J. Schwab write the Game of Thrones? The Song of Ice and Fire role-playing, I think it was called? I don't know. So Joseph says, Against the Dark Master is a good generic high fantasy rule set, but yeah, it's an I want to be my favorite book series type feel. Okay. Well, but that still doesn't tell me if it's just ripping off Middle Earth roleplay. So I don't know. I don't know. But can't tell you. And then the funny thing is, we already talked about this the other night. Middle Earth roleplay was Iron Crown, so it's actually built on a stripped down arms law, claw law, spell law. So, which actually has a brand new edition that's out in PDF. So Joseph says, no, it's not a direct ripoff of Iron Crown Entertainment's MERP. Cool. Okay. Cool. Then, like I said, I don't know. It was just an impression I got. Whereas I do know for a fact Zweihander is a ripoff of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2E. So there. So Simeon says, Blackbird's based on Zweihander system is pretty good read. So is Flames of Freedom. Yes, I've seen them. Like I said, I get press releases from their new publisher who publishes these releases in hardcover. And it's like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to promote it because the system has been ripped off from somebody else. So it doesn't matter if it's good read or not. If somebody's basically stealing someone else's content, I don't know. But then again, we fall into that whole, well, you can't copyright mechanics. You can't copyright rules. I don't know. Coco B says, and Warlock is a mix of fighting fantasy and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. It's a light system. It looks pretty interesting. I know there's quite a bit out there for it. This is an excellent bundle. It really, really is. I will point out, I'm not super keen on the Dark Eye. The Dark Eye, and I know it's been around forever, and it's got tons and tons of content out there. Although it took them how long to come out with an English language magic book, I thought was kind of ridiculous. But it's kind of, to me, I've reviewed it. I got quite a lot of stuff from Ulysses Spiel back in the day. And I mean, it's interesting, but it's kind of generic. And it's one of these games where I feel that there's like layers of complexity built into the system just for the sake of complexity. It doesn't bring anything new or different to the table with rolling 3 20-sided dice and having to compare it to 3 different attributes. It's weird. But I know a lot of people love it, especially in Europe. So Coco B says they picked up Warlock from past news on the Gaming Gang Dispatch. Very nice. Very nice. Anyway, as I said, very, very cool bundle that's available right now. It is not benefiting any charities, though. So, do want to mention that. And the savings do run through, once again, January 16th. So you've got some time. And I had to laugh because I took a look at the Beyond the Bundle, where you tend to get some additional information about these bundles of holding. And it said the license for this bundle runs out. It ends on the 16th. And they're like, well, no, there's really no license, but the savings do end. Moving right along, pre-orders have begun for this year's Valentine's Day adventure for Dungeon Crawl Classics. Here's the dope on Love Mutants of the Castle Heartache from Goodman Games. Ever be dumped so hard you transformed into a bloodthirsty mutant monster? We see you, hero. Olaf V, mad ungod of mortal passion, lies heartsick after his romantic advances when ignored by the otherworldly object of his affection. Now his cosmic desolation grips our entire world, separating every lover from their other and threatening to end civilization within a generation. The only chance for mankind is a dangerous quest that will pit our lovelorn heroes against Olaf V's own castle guardians, mutated by metaphysical anguish into horrifying creatures. Who dares to delve into the darkest, loneliest corners of Castle Heartache? This is a third-level holiday adventure inspired by true events. Certainly don't think I want to know about those true events. Also includes original Valentine's card images that you can give out to your loved ones. Right now, you can pre-order the softcover adventure, which includes the PDF, for $9.99. So Russell Higgins like, what's he got in his hand? This is kind of an oddball cover. It's sort of like, it's like, all right, starting to get almost getting pornographic there. But I am a little curious if this will actually be out before Valentine's Day. Because every once in a while I've noticed that like the holiday adventure, at least maybe it's when they hit stores. Because I know the Christmas, or maybe I should say winter holiday adventure for Dungeon Crawl Classics just came out in stores. And of course, we know the winter holidays have passed. So I'm a little curious, although the PDF, obviously, you would get your hands on. Well, maybe I shouldn't say obviously. I would really expect you to be able to get your hands on prior to Valentine's Day. I like how Goodman Games does these adventures for various different holidays. I think it's kind of cool. They don't do it every single year, but they do it quite often. So Joseph says that they agree on Dark Eye. They ended up using it as a setting reference for a different flavor in an old school Essentials campaign. Flaming Heron also had pointed out they look at Dark Eye more as a setting book. And also had mentioned there's no shortage of systems to run which aren't 5e. Very, very true. Very, very true. Alrighty then. My final news piece, now available in PDF for the Savage Worlds Adventure Edition, is the Fantasy Companion. Here's the skinny from Pinnacle Entertainment Group. A sword and shield, an evil wizard, hordes of undead, and a dragon ravaging the countryside. No genre in role-playing games is more iconic than medieval fantasy. I said medieval? Russell says, does the dark guy squint? like Popeye does. The Savage Worlds Fantasy Companion provides all the tools you need to travel to fantasy lands or create your own phenomenal setting, all in the award-winning Savage Worlds rules system. This 272-page book updates the original fantasy campaign to be completely compatible with the Savage Worlds Adventure Edition. Here's what you'll find inside. Gorgeous new layout by fan favorite Carl Kiesler, a beautiful cover by Tomek Turek, and all new art by the phenomenal Bien Flores, Unique Sapari, Alberto Bontempi, and more. New character options, edges, and hindrances. New equipment, weapons, and armor, as well as rules for creating your party's own stronghold. There you go. Domain play. Almost every fantasy role-playing game talks about it and then doesn't provide it. New setting rules to replicate your favorite style of fantasy, from grim and gritty swords and sorcery epics to backstabbing thrillers and noble courts to traditional dungeon delves. Use all new setting rules to create your own worlds or recreate those of your favorite settings, such as The Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Conan the Barbarian, The Witcher, and anything else you can imagine, which I have to chuckle because all of those properties have their own role-playing games. New arcane backgrounds unique to fantasy settings. A pantheon of deific domains and a host of new powers for your casters and more options for existing powers. There's items of power. Celebrate the fruits of your hero's victories with treasures mundane and fantastic, as you can use as plunder or reward for adventurers who brave the depths of the deepest dungeons and darkest forests. Both the treasures and the entire treasure system have been cleaned up, rewritten, and streamlined from the original Fantasy Companion. There's also a massive bestiary of allies, enemies, and monsters. The 274-page Fantasy Companion is available at DriveThruRPG for $24.99, and the hardcover itself is on the near horizon. It is not out yet, and I gotta be honest, I don't have an MSRP for it either. So there you have it, yet another role-playing game that has absolutely nothing to do with the open game license. I mentioned in my science fiction RPG video that Savage Worlds, to me, always, I equate that with science fiction and horror. Strangely enough, I don't equate it with fantasy. Although, we do have this new Fantasy Companion, and I know there are a lot of fantasy settings that are available to plug Savage Worlds into. It's just weird. I always think science fiction, mainly, and horror. So Russell Higgins says, man, DriveThruRPG is going to be getting some of their money this week. Russell also pointed out all those settings stole something from another setting, with probably the exception of Tolkien. I would think, haven't people said that Tolkien is kind of cribbed a little bit from Lord Dunsany? I thought I remember hearing that years and years ago. So Kevin says, yes, an eternity later, Robert Schwalb did write A Song of Ice and Fire role-playing. Nice. That I did not know. I had no idea. 245 Trioxin is with us. I think I said hi to 245 Trioxin earlier, and almost positive. Says, don't forget, Savage Pathfinder. Yes. And isn't the second adventure path coming out for Savage Pathfinder? I could have swore it was. I think the second one is either out now or it's coming very shortly. All righty. That is it for the news tonight. Of course, I was just talking about DriveThruRPG. Don't forget, the gaming gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to go visit DriveThruRPG, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a small portion of that sale. And all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do add up and help keep thegaminggang.com around. Also, if you're heading over to, say, Storyteller's Vault, or even like, drive-through cards, drive-through fiction, you can still use our banner ads. Once you get to drive-through RPG, all you got to do is scan down the lower left, and you'll see the various different One Bookshelf sites. Click on one of those links, and it'll still hold our affiliate code. So that really, really does help us out quite a lot. Also, if you like this video, if you dig the channel, if you find thegaminggang.com to be a valuable resource, hell, if you just like what we do, then by all means, you can always swing on over to paypal.me/thegaminggang and make a small donation, as the Madman has recently, and it was not a small donation either. So thankfully, big tip of the cap to the Madman and all of those out there who use the banner ads as well as the paypal.me. So thank you very much. Much appreciated. I say it all the time. I don't do Patreon. I don't run Kickstarters to stick around. So it really is drive-through RPG and the donations that people make that really keeps thegaminggang.com around. Yes, there is some advertising from time to time on the website, but not a ton. Not really. Madman says, shouldn't be too much longer for the second Savage Pathfinder campaign. He has backed it, doesn't have it yet, but soon. Quantum Phase Dragon is with us in chat. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Russell says, if they have something in their cart at Drive-Thru RPG and then leave and go back to the Gaming Gang banner, do I still get the moolah? I don't know. I gotta be honest. I have no idea. I don't know. It's like I had somebody who had contacted me and they were curious. They actually were talking about, well, I've had a few people recently talking about actually sponsoring the show and doing some advertising on the website. And they had asked, well, how many clicks can I expect from the website to Drive-Thru RPG? I told them, I don't know. Can't tell you. I was like, there's no way for me to predict that. For one, if it's something that people are interested in and they see the banner ad, they'll click on it. If it's something they're like, I'm not interested in that, they're not going to click on it. So can't tell you. I can tell people, how many, they can see themselves, how many people watch the videos. They can see pretty much, the comments, thumbs up, things like that. And I can share, unique viewer numbers and total views of the website. I can't predict what people are going to do. Viper Dave is with us. Good to see you, Viper Dave. So Flaming Heron says, as long as you have the affiliate link before you pay, he thinks that the affiliate does get credit for that sale. Madman says they just did that today. Not sure how soon it takes to see the pennies after the purchase. They're pretty good. It's usually the day before. So like if I went today, I could look to see what affiliate sales took place through yesterday. So, and they're actually very good. They pay out through PayPal. They take $1. So regardless of how much you're cashing out from them, they only take $1. So I do it on a monthly basis right before I pay for the hosting for the website. So as I mentioned before, normally the commissions on Drive-Thru RPG pay for the hosting for thegaminggang.com, which I've mentioned before is not cheapo hosting. It's not GoDaddy hosting for $3 a month, because you can't bring in over 1 million unique visitors a year on that kind of hosting. Plus, with all the images and things like that that are on the website, because there are, oh my gosh, what are there, like 15,000 articles total on thegaminggang.com? There's like, I think 30 gigs of images. And I compress images to save space. And it's like 30, I think the total for the website itself is something like 37 gigabytes of info, of files. And the reality is all the text and stuff like that does not take up much space. It's all pretty much images. So there you have it. All right, that is the news for tonight. We're going to be taking a look at the Charge of the Three Kings in just a few moments, but there were just a few things I did want to mention before we dive on in. So Kevin says it might depend on whether you've navigated away from drive-through RPG or left the window open. Just check and see if you see an affiliate ID equals or something similar in the URL. Yeah, that's usually how you'll know. Although I do believe, now I don't know if it's still the same, but I'm pretty sure it used to be that if you visited Drive-Thru RPG through an affiliate, that you would get a cookie on your computer that would last a week. Don't know if that's still the case or not. Roll for Combat's with us again. Good to see you, Stephen. Says so much fun. Yes, in case you missed it, which I have not watched it. I have not seen it, but I do know that Stephen had a special guest on today. Yes. You might want to share that with us there. Yes, Ryan Dancy, if I remember correctly, the gentleman who wrote the original open game license, was on the show. And Stephen says, it was fantastic, if I must say so. If I must say so myself. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Me and my wife, Morgan Fairchild. Yay, that's it. That's the ticket. That's a blast from the past. Wancho Dumagal is with us. Good to see you, Wancho. We're taking a look at Special Agency, which he authored on Monday's show. I will mention that again as we get to it. So Kevin says they watched the stream live. Nice. Very cool. So says what? No new open game license streams in the last hour? Coco B says, serious though. Who picks a fight with thousands of rules lawyers at the same time? Thankfully, I don't have rules lawyers at my table anymore. I think I pointed out before, when I was younger, when I was in my teens and into my early 20s, I was a notorious rules lawyer. Although I wasn't one of these people who was like, oh, no, you can't do it. It was just, I knew the rules to a game, so I'd do something. Usually it was miniatures, some sort of miniatures game. And I remember, I'll never forget, it was my best friend, Elliot, myself, a good friend of mine, Ed. I think somebody else was there, and we were at Ed's apartment playing Silent Death, which was actually a very cool science fiction starfighter miniatures game. And I pulled some maneuver and blew up one of Ed's ships. And he's like, you can't do that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I can. It's like, no, you can't do that. I said, yeah, it's right here. It's in the rules, man. I'm telling you. Oh, no. And I showed it to him, and he was pissed. I was like, dude, I didn't write the rule. I know it. So, man says, where's Scott Weigel when we need stories? You know, the funny thing is, now granted, we were part of a club, and we did a lot of gaming, but I have far more gaming stories with like Elliot and my friend Ed and like even like my nephew Cameron, because after high school, Scott and his family moved away. They moved away from Chicago, so we didn't see him. In fact, a lot of the people that I was friends with and played games with in high school, after high school, they left town. So some of them joined the military, and some of them went off to college, you know, away from home, which I didn't. I stayed, you know, around. In fact, I tell people all the time that I still consider myself a Chicagoan because I lived in Chicago, in the city itself, for like 35 years. So, granted, I've lived in New Mexico and I've lived in Arizona, and now I live out in the burbs, the far burbs of Chicago. But yeah, I just love the city. So yes, where's Scott when we need some stories? Oh, I've got plenty of stories. Maybe episode 900. I'll see if Elliot wants to swing on in again, and let's shoot the shit, right? Talk about stuff. Although Elliot's memory is not great, but it is pretty good when it comes to games we played. So there is that. Anyway, so I was going to say a few things I wanted to tackle before we jump on into the Charge of the Three Kings. First of all, the fine folks over at Hero Games reached out to me because they caught my fantasy role-playing game video, and they want to send me a fantasy hero to take a peek at. So I was like, okay. Like, all right. And I was sort of like, well, you know, if you want to throw some champion stuff at me too, I'm more than happy to share that. We go way back. We played Champions when it first came out. Way, way back in the day. That was not a game that I ran, though. It was a game that I owned the core book to. Yes, it was another game that I had a core book to that I never ran. Many hundreds of books back in the day. So I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Also, this weekend, be sure to tune in for my first episode of the Classic Cthulhu Case Files. That's right, I will be sharing adventures for Call of Cthulhu from way back in the day and discussing how they hold up for today's game table and what ways you might make some changes or adapt them to be able to play these days. And it's really funny looking back at some of the original supplements that came out, some of the first supplements that came out for Call of Cthulhu. You could see just how like Dungeons and Dragons, the adventures were laid out. It's very, very wild just to see how far things have come. In fact, if you've never really looked at some of the old school adventures, very, very interesting approach. Because of course you didn't have linear adventures. You didn't really have railroads. It was sort of like, this is what's going on in this location. This is what's in this location. That's what's here. All right, now you go with it. So like, all right, there you go. All right, Kevin says they like to think themselves as a white hat rules lawyer. Nice. Also, last thing I wanted to mention. There are a lot of people out there, and this just touches on the open game license. Once again, I'm getting really tired of it. But I know there are a lot of people out there who are talking about how, because I had tweeted something like, if you think Open Game License 1.1 is going to destroy the role-playing game hobby, you've been playing the wrong role-playing game all this time, or all these years, whatever. And I've seen people commenting both on that tweet and other tweets out there that we're going to show Wizards of the Coast. We're gonna do stuff. We're gonna create our own games and things like that. And unfortunately, we live in an age where, well, money talks, bullshit walks. But we live in an age where, people think, oh, I tweeted something that I've changed the world, baby. with my tweet. So I am going to roll out a new series, because remember I was talking about how I wanted to do the Dungeons and Dragons TSR Treasures. In fact, I had a cool opening all put together for it, at least for the first episode. And now it's sort of like, I don't want to do anything that possibly benefits Wizards of the Coast in any way, shape, or form, even if it would be somebody purchasing a PDF over at Dungeon Masters Guild. So I'm rolling out a new series. I'll do it maybe within the next few days, because I'm actually kind of chomping at the bit to shoot it. And it's going to be, let's make an open source fantasy role-playing game. And I am going to share some ideas and then have people comment in the comment section what they like best. And we're actually going to build a completely open sourced fantasy role-playing game. It'll be rules light. It's not going to be like crazy. All right, let's discuss grappling rules. Not going to have that. But I got some ideas to float out there. And then when it's all said and done, we'll look to see if we can kind of put it together and just release it as free PDF. So there is that. So Dan says he's excited for the future of the hobby. I'm always excited for the future of role-playing games. As long as you've got people out there who are creative and they're not just towing the company line, we're in good shape. Flaming Heron says Jeff with his own open game license. No, not at all. Just completely open source. Do with it what you will. And it's gonna have kind of an old school vibe to it. Some of the ideas that I've got. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right. So Joseph says, no crunchy grappling tables. Roll 1d6 for toe lock damage. Yeah, that's always been one of my running gags about grappling rules. And it's like Russell says it has to have grappling rules. How else can I grapple a snake like in Conan? Oh, well, we'll have, unarmed, things like that. So one of the things, and trust me, we're gonna get into the brief intermission in a moment, and then jump on into the charge of the Three Kings, because we're at almost the hour mark. So Wancho says, as King Alfonso VIII said, Jeff, we all die here. So I was trying to figure out non-Vancian magic, because I want the game to kind of have a more of a kind of swords and sorcery feel to it, so that magic is wild, it's not easy to control, and it's not Vancian. So I've got some ideas about that as well. So I think it'll be kind of fun. I think it'll be kind of cool. And the first video is going to be kind of the basics, talking about attributes as well as action resolution, because I want to have, I don't, I like old school, but I don't want it to be like, well, if you're going to pick the lock, you're going to roll a D12, but if you're going to sneak, you're going to roll percentile dice. Oh, and if you want to backstab, well, it's a 20-sided die attack roll. And I want to have a relatively standard mechanic for your action resolution and your challenges and things like that. Dan says, wild magic is the best. It's one of the things I really like about Dungeon Crawl Classics. Although all those tables for each and every spell gets kind of old, but I do like how magic corrupts. They have a piece of artwork where it's like, oh, this is someone who's new to the arcane arts, and then there's like a progression how they kind of like fall apart. Russell says, no charts like Rollmaster? Come on, Jeff. Yes, I'll have I'll bust out the Gygax armory, right? Because he loved pole arms. I think Advanced Dungeons and Dragons has like 10 or 12 pole arms. Yes, and I'll actually have charts for each of them for hits and critical hits and stuff like that. Wancho says, good system is one that has a mechanic that it uses for almost everything, like D100. Yeah, percentile dice. Plus, percentile dice are very easy to wrap your head around. Just a percentile roll. You're like, oh, well, I've got a 30% chance of succeeding. I understand what that means. But I'm not going to use D100. Like I said, I want to keep it still towards... Kevin says I have to have at least 20 pole arms. I'll just start creating pole arms. So I'll just invent them so we have a nice even 20. All right. Anyway, so we're going to jump into the Charge of the Three Kings in just a couple of moments. But first, I think it's time for a brief intermission.
Wait till you see what I get from the refreshment counter. Oh boy, popcorn and candy bars and ice cream and oh boy, sparkling ice cold Coca-Cola. Oh boy, that tastes good. Have you been to the refreshment counter?
Remember, your favorite snack will taste especially good with world-famous ice-cold Coca-Cola.
Here's why people like you like Drury's best. Flavor in, sweetness out. Drury's beer is wonderful. Big tea time is fun time. Drury's time is fun time. You'll shout for that big tea fun and laughter. You like Drury's best. The flavor's great, no doubt of it. Sweetness is brewed out of it. Drury's beer. You'll shout for that big tea fun and laughter. No full feeling after. More flavor, less filling, more fun.
We're here to persuade people to drink more Wilkins coffee.
What's the club for?
To get their attention. Oh, Crystal Ball, how can I buy a house? This free FHA Consumer Bulletin explains how to buy a home you can afford with payments you can handle. Write to Home Purchases, Department 4, FHA, Washington, D.C. Over and out. Son of a gun.
Wonkins lives with a headache, pretty bad headache, I would guess. Tonight, I am going to dive on in and unbox and take a first look at The Charge of the Three Kings from NAC Wargames, designed by Carlos Diaz with artwork provided by Ivan Cesares. The game is for 2 players, ages 14 and up, plays in 2 to 4 hours, and carries an MSRP of $64.99. This is available now, and NAC Wargames now has a North American store. So you can very easily order any of their war games and not have to worry about paying exorbitant shipping charges to get them from overseas. All right, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got Charge of the Three Kings. So do want to mention that the fine folks over at NAC Wargames did provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the gaming gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this first look with you. These days, it's important that you know that. So let's take a look at the back. And it appears this might be in 2 languages. So I'm thinking maybe that's why this is so heavy, because this is really, this box has to be like 6 pounds. Easy. It might be more than that. So I'm thinking there might be a couple of rule books. Might even be because I see we've got decks of cards, because this is kind of a card-driven war game as well. There might be 2 decks. I don't know. I have no idea. Summer of 1212. Christians and Muslims face off in a pitched battle at Navas de Tolosa. The Muslim forces greatly outnumber the Christian Crusader army, but the kings of Navarre, Aragon, and Castile stand together against the Almohad Caliph al-Nasir. As the Christian player, will you defeat the Almohad army and take its standard, emulating the historical charge of the 3 Christian kings? Or maybe, as the Muslim player, you'll put an end to the Christian crusade altogether. In this exciting game, you can recreate this famous battle. Each turn, players alternate activating their army formations and playing cards and command points to use special abilities in a dynamic game experience with constant interaction between players. So Wancho's giving you the different weight equivalents. 3 pounds is about 3 kilograms. So Russell says in Spain, so guessing Spanish and English. I'm thinking maybe, because as I had mentioned before, I thought NAC Wargames is a Spanish company. All right, so here we've got, yep, just as I thought. So we've got a rule book. This looks like that is in Spanish. We have a rule book that is in English. And we have a scenario book. So we've got that. So let's take a peek. I'm going to move the Spanish language rulebooks out of the way. So let's dive on into this. So it was showing like it looked like on a scale of 1 to 5 complexity on the back, and this fell right into the middle. So one thing I am going to be curious about is if this overhead video is any sharper than it has been in the past, because I'm actually downsampling 10-bit. So it's still probably like an 8-bit stream. So hopefully the text and everything is going to be a little bit sharper. It says the Charge of the 3 Kings is a deeply tactical game that recreates the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa. At the end of this rulebook, see page 14, a specific section for playing the basic version can be found that outlines which rules of the full game are not used. It's recommended that experienced wargamers begin with the full game rules. Those who are less experienced or are looking for a shorter game can try the basic version. However you decide to play the game, we sincerely hope you have a lot of fun. For familiarizing yourself with the rule book, we also recommend you read the example play at the end of the scenario book as a way of consolidating the rules and concepts of the game. I will mention, so far I have seen a couple of minor localization errors as far as translation, but as you can see, I read through them without skipping a beat. So Wancho is sharing more quotes from Alfonso VIII. So Kevin says reading the 2 books side by side would be a great way to improve one's Spanish. Well, seeing that I have difficulties with the English language, I don't know. So it looks like we have facing. Looks like we've got facing with our units. We've got our game board. So we have 5 different formations. So we've got a vanguard, center, right flank, left flank, and rear guard. So it looks like we use 6, 10, and 12-sided dice. We have a fog of war screen. Wonder if that's going to divide the board for your setup. So we get a breakdown of our unit counters. So we have a unit class, combat factor, quality factor, movement factor, origin, and what formation are they part of. So you may not be able to tell, but there's kind of a, well, is it pink? Is that what they said? Yeah, it is pink. So I was going to say it's kind of a fuchsia. So then we get the origin shows a banner, and then it's going to tell us where they are from. So we have the Knights Templar, we have the Knights Hospitaller there as well. Order of Santiago. This looks kind of interesting. We've got tactics cards. On every turn, players can use a tactics card during each impulse as an event, or alternatively as a reaction during the opponent's impulse. Text on the cards specify the moment they can be used. There are also strategy cards. At the start of every odd-numbered turn, each player's strategy card deck is remade to form the deck that will be available for the current and next even turn. So we have alternate uses, or I should say alternative uses for the cards. You can discard cards to improve the overall commander's regular command point roll. So you can discard a card to avoid Andalusian desertion. There's a rule you can avoid as well. So we get our sequence of play. So we have a start phase. We have our impulse activation. And it's going to break down everything that takes place during that. We have initiative. So far, pretty cool. And this is also a topic that is not been gamed to death. So I found that to be very interesting. So this is not a battle that I'm aware of any other board game simulating. Now, honestly, it's possible that there are others, but I don't know. I don't believe so. So we've got our section about combat, leaders, and command points. There you go. There's Alfonso the Eighth, the counter for them. And we have special units. Spearmen. Oh, I don't know. Is that the pole arm they're using? It's got to be a different pole arm rather than a spear. Not just a spear. Flaming Heron says, English is hard, Jeff. It is for me sometimes. So we have the royal retinue. We've got the archbishop. Got the various, it's a discussion of the different kings, it looks like. Camel riders, black guard. So in the basic version, it says, do not use strategy cards. Do not use tactic cards. Do not use command points. Do not use the archbishop or the Alahad standard bearer. And then it's talking about on the ranged attacks table, use the D column as the ED column, and the ED column is E. This way units will be eliminated more easily, which will shorten the game. That's kind of interesting. Then we get our scenario book with our formations, order of battle, historical background, design notes, and we get an extended example of play. So I'll tell you right now is what I would be reading first. That's what I do with GMT games. So we've got our order of battle for the vanguard, the center, the right, the left, and the rear guard for the Christian forces, which consists of 70 units plus a counter, and the Muslim units consist of 90 units plus one counter. So here we've got our scenarios and deployments. The board I thought looked kind of interesting because it looks like there's actually like mounted knights on it. Macho says this was one of the most important battles of the Middle Ages. Many more troops than at Agincourt. A real cross-cultural battle comparable only to Hastings or the capture of Constantinople. As far as I understand, I thought this battle was what essentially completed the Reconquista for Spain, which I guess that would be Aragorn at that point. So here we've got the discussion of the battle, the historical background, the events leading up to it, the battle itself and the aftermath. We get some biographies of the three kings and some design notes. Some basic strategies. That's kind of cool. And then we get our extended example of play. I'm impressed. This is the first time I've seen anything from NAC Wargames, and I'm impressed. The rule books, paper stock is nice and thick. So they will not fall apart at the table as you're trying to find a rule. Then we've got some punch boards with our counters. Decent thickness here as well. So we'll zoom in. Get a better look. I'll get this out of the way. So, yep. Okay. I was just double checking to make sure that the autofocus is on, because otherwise it'd be like, oh yeah, if I've got the locked focus, which I usually do when I'm showing off like a book, I lock in the focus. Russell says rounded corners, nice. Yes, I know I'm a heathen. I don't clip my counters. I don't have time. It'd be one thing if it was like, oh yeah, I'm just getting this game ready to play. I got other things I got to take care of too. You know, website to run, videos to shoot. I like the unit artwork. That's cool. All right, so that's one there. We've got another one here. I believe these are the Muslim forces. Of course, dual-sided. Do we have step reduction? Let's try and take a look here. Let's see. 3, 5, 6. Now. But I do see we have lines through them. So it doesn't look like we have step reduction, but it looks as if maybe when a unit takes a hit, you flip it over to the side that's got the stripe through it, which also corresponds to their formation, it seems. So we've got that. And then we've got what looks to be some informational markers. All in all, very nice quality. Tell you that much. Okay, so we've got those. We have a mounted board in here, but we also have some other displays. Oh, this is the Fog of War board, and it's like a Game Master screen. It's like the thickness of a Game Master screen. Okay, so we've got our administrative display. So I'm going to take a guess that this is probably single-sided. It is not. Oh, there you go. So we got English, and then we have the Spanish. So I'm going to guess that may be what each of these looks like. One side English and the other side in Spanish. So we have our dice and modifier summary. So like we've got a lot going on here, as well as the different units. Quite a lot of different units here. And ranged attacks, depending on the quality of the units, the distance, as well as what kind of armor type of the attacking unit. Interesting. Nice. So 2 of these, 1 for each player, and then we have 1 for each player in Spanish. Then we have a sequence of play that breaks down the start of the turn, the impulse activation phase, end of turn, talking about command points, yielding an activation. So I guess the other side's in Spanish. Yep. So there we go. So we've got that. And then, as I mentioned, we have this Fog of War board. That's interesting. So I'm taking a guess. You're going to kind of try to set it up like this. So whichever player gets to set up without the other player getting a chance to see. Oh, and look, it appears that we've got some stands that this slides into so that you can stand it up. So you probably stand it straight across like this, and actually not actually folding it like I had it where, oh yeah, well, it's like a Game Master screen like that. Oh, that's pretty cool. Artwork on this is nice too. And we've got the 2 decks of cards. Hey, my predictions have come true. So we do have 2 decks, 1 in Spanish, 1 in English. We'll take a look at the cards in a second. We've got the game board. Are we going to have 2 game boards here? Okay, so they are dual-sided, I can tell you that much. But as you can see, I'll actually hold this up and bring this closer. The game board has like casualties. You see there's, looks like a horse. Looks like a peasant with a dog pointing down here. That's pretty wild. Okay, then take a look at the back here. Looks like it's the same board. I don't really see a difference here. Or is there more detail to the terrain? That's what I'm kind of curious about. Let's see. So we've got that. No, looks the same. Huh. Okay. So that's the top portion of it. And then we got the bottom portion of it. See, once again, as I mentioned, we've got some characters on horseback. So, Joseph says full hex versus dot hex on each side. So Mr. Eddie T says one side's in Spanish, the other is in English. Yeah, that's what I thought maybe we would see, but there's absolutely no language on this. So here we see we've got the dots. And then, oh, there you go. That is the difference. So we have full hexes, and then we just have the dot. Well, we have dots in the center of these too. But rather than the full hex, that's kind of cool. That's a nice kind of little bonus, I guess we'll say. Very, very cool. Like I said, I'm very impressed with what I've seen of this. So good sized board as well, as you could tell. And then that is the game box. And this game box is nice and sturdy. Okay, so we've got the 2 decks. Put the Spanish one there. It's actually more than 2 decks, but these are the English cards. Let's just get the hobby knife here. See what we have. So the card stock is a little thin, not terrible. It's all right. They do not have a linen finish, in case you're curious. But games that have cards, I don't care if they have a linen finish or not. I always recommend just sleeve the cards. Stray Kismet says they love the hexes. That is an interesting looking board, I can tell you that much. All right, so these are events, I think. So I'll give you a better look here. One last push. A secret path. Rally the troops. So I believe these events appear to be kind of neutral. Could be either side, is what I'm guessing here. Okay, then we've got the Muslim events. Allah is great. The writings of the Prophet. Inspirational Muslim leader. And then we've got our Christians. Christian leadership. Faith in Christ. Expert marksman. The Word of God. Cool. I like that. Okay, so these are, like I said, I think these are event cards. I'm not sure. Then I think these are the tactics. So we have tactics cards. So let's see something here. Huh. Okay. So we have some gray cards. Hold your ground. Pursuit. Glory Seekers. So I'm curious, maybe these cards are also found in the Muslim deck as well. Possibility. Bloodthirst. So let me know if the video seems to be any sharper than usual. Circled battlefield. Okay, so then we have the Archbishop. So we've got the Kings, Pedro II of Aragon. What is that? Ultramonte Crusaders. Christian Infantry. Charge of the Three Kings. And then take a look at this. So do we have, yeah, we've got great cards in here too. Yep, they do look to be kind of universal, right? So we had Glory Seekers for the Christians. We have that as well here. And then it looks as if the cards, which are the color of that side, has specific cards devoted to their units. Defensive Palisade, Muslim Flanking Maneuver, Religious Fervor. Nice. Very, very cool. All right. So those are the event and tactic cards, or strategy cards and tactics cards. Then we've got the 2-part mounted board, also very nice and thick. So this will hold up very nicely. And as we saw, has 2 different kinds of hex styles. So that's pretty cool. So Joseph said video quality looks really good on the card close-ups. Game in general looks awesome for the price. Yeah, you know, I was going to say that. This is $64.99 is the MSRP. And from what we've seen, I'm not going to name any names, and I don't mean GMT Games when I say this, but we've seen some wargame companies out there charging the same sort of price for stuff, and it's got nowhere near the number of components and just the overall quality. Like these handouts, nice and thick. This is really, really nice. And as I mentioned before, NAC Wargames has been around for a while. Now, I noticed, I think there's 3 games on their website for their North American store, but I believe they've got quite a few other games. In fact, wasn't it the scenario book that had it looked like it was a picture of, here we go. Are these books or are these games? Here, I'll hold it up so you can see. I thought, doesn't NAC make miniatures too? Like plastic minis? But you see, this is the picture that I'm talking about. It's like, I don't know, those look like games, right? But I think there's only 3 on the website, the nacwargames.com website. So we've got the rules and everything in Spanish. We've got the different language cards. We've got the different language as far as the player aids in that. I'm kind of surprised we actually didn't see 2 different languages for the counters. That would be crazy. Because funny enough, if that were the case, then it'd be like, well, I got 2 copies of one game in this box. One for someone who speaks and reads Spanish, and one for somebody like me who barely understands English half the time. All right. So this is the charge of the 3 Kings. Once again, it is from NAC Wargames. The game is for 2 players, ages 14 and up. Plays in 2 to 4 hours. We saw there are different scenarios, and it does carry an MSRP of $64.99. Very, very nice. Hopefully I have an opportunity to get this to the game table in a relatively decent amount of time. So, nice. Once again, the charge of the 3 Kings. So stay tuned. Okay, so what's cooking next week? Well, as I mentioned on Monday's show, I am going to take a first look and page through the 2nd edition of Special Agency, which is written by Juancho Dumagal, although that's not the name on here. Yes, Juancho is in chat with us. So we're going to be taking a peek at this on Monday's show. The rest of the week, I don't know. I have no clue. Of course, the rest of this week and into the weekend, don't forget, I will have my first episode of the classic Cthulhu Case Files, as well as the Let's Make an Open Source Fantasy Role-Playing Game, Part 1. Also have reviews of Into the Odd, remastered. I think this is remastered, or it's the deluxe edition, what have you. This is the one that's available from our friends over at Free League Publishing. And I know people have been asking for it, so I will share my review of Cyborg, which is also from Free League Publishing. A lot of videos coming, a lot of videos on their way. So Sarah D said, I don't know why the rest of that message disappeared. I don't know. I have no idea. Okay, so that is it for this time out. Long show, man. We're going to wrap up at about an hour, 40 minutes. Yeah, I was like, well, actually, thank you so much for hanging out for it. Stray Kismet said the science fiction choices rocked. I might throw out a horror video. I don't know, mainly because, like I said, I don't have a lot of horror role-playing games. So a lot of it would just be, oh, here, like when I do the news, right? It'd be like, oh, here, I'm going to show you the cover of the book, give you, the link to their website, and I'm going to talk for a minute or a half or so. I don't know that. I don't find that too exciting, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I gotta say that the fantasy role-playing game video has reached, I think, number 6 all time on the Gaming Gang channel. So that's pretty cool. I like that. Still has a long way to go to hit it's got a long way to go to hit number 3, but still it's already in the top 5 and it's not even been out for a week. Sweet. Okay. Anyway, as I mentioned, that is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because it'll not only let you know when the Dispatch streams live Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. It'll also let you know when I upload other videos, such as the upcoming review of Cyborg from Free League Publishing. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, don't forget, visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more that you don't find here on the YouTube channel, such as Sammy Uhas's recent review of the finale of the Bloodlords Adventure Path for Pathfinder, as well as her upcoming review of the first part of the latest Starfinder Adventure Path. Both of those are from Paizo Inc. So if you were watching live, thank you very much. Always appreciate you hanging out, keeping me company. If you took part in chat, well, that is a bonus for you. You get to level up and pay extra. Just like the Open Gaming License 1.1. Congrats. No, if you were watching live, thank you very much. And taking part in chat, a bigger tip of the cap, because you're keeping each other company, you're keeping me company as well. But of course, I know a lot of people out there, you don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Thank you so much for watching any of the videos on the channel, taking time out of your busy life to do so. I will be back next week. Once again, on Monday, we will be taking a look at Special Agency 2nd Edition. But of course, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it happens to be today. Have a great rest of the week. Have a fantastic weekend. Of course, like I said, I'll be back on Monday. And of course, here's hoping each and every one of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang. Oh, hey, you're still here. Well, that's okay. You don't have to leave just yet. In fact, why don't you subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel right here, or take a peek at the latest live stream, or even find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks again for watching.